Now you're 35 and you're still living with your mom and dad. Like, yeah, no shit, that person's not going to be ready for marriage because they have never, they've gone, they probably had one or two relationships in their life. They haven't had to care or protect or do anything. They have no responsibility. They have no idea how the world works. They're a child. But nowadays, so many people I know are from broken families and broken homes. And there's nothing there for them to even to glean any information from. They're just bumbling through life. But what do they have? They have the internet. They have these fucking psychos to tell them, hold frame. Hold frame, idiot. Hold frame and have a harem of women.
The next 2 minutes will be unsettling. I have debated whether or not I should start the video off like this because I know it's going to be off-putting, and ultimately decided to
ASMR.
make that the point. The dating conversation is incredibly divisive. We have all been burned and we want someone to blame. But I hope that starting off this way will get us on the same page by feeling the same thing. Disgust. Enough of it to leave all this madness behind. The dating culture has never been more self-destructively entertaining. We have emotionally volatile people on podcasts degrading their guests for their own self-gratification.
True.
We have soft life girlies telling you how to dress, speak, and breathe elegantly to bag a provider man. We have alpha men flaunting their modern-day harems of Instagram baddies to override their innate need for emotional connection to impress other men. We have dating apps commodifying romance while profiting from your failure to find it. We have high-value dating coaches teaching you how to invest the least by getting the most out of the very person that you desire. We have trad wives influencing impressionable young women into traditional gender roles without disclosing the very common dangers of financial abuse. We have trend chasers claiming they want a traditional relationship without the resources, the values, or the skill set to qualify them for it. We have street interviewers giving immature, jaded clout chasers permission to feed into polarizing stereotypes for the sake of engagement. We have reality dating shows giving a platform to emotionally unavailable people, desensitizing us to unethical behavior by turning it into entertainment. Speaking of entertainment, we have adult entertainment programming men to dehumanize women by fetishizing misogyny. We have attractive young women weaponizing their appeal to desperate men for financial gain because a girl's gotta eat. We have manifestation content feeding your delusions about your specific person through hope baiting you at your lowest, most vulnerable time. We have aimless young men flocking to reclaim their masculinity through a counterculture of extreme ownership, ruthless self-discipline, and conditional self-worth at the expense of their capacity for intimacy. Why? Because they feel their lovability is dependent on their usefulness. We have lover girls entering their dark feminine energy villain era because they are tired of being emotional surrogates for men who see their love as an expendable resource for their personal development. We have pop astrology being a socially acceptable excuse for impulsive behavior, premature values, and a somehow valid measure for compatibility. We have pop psychology giving people a license to diagnose everyone that hurt them as a narcissist. We have relationship commentators red flagging practically anything to push a zero-tolerance dating policy.
She's hitting everything.
We have older generations warning us about marriage as an outdated institution that screws over men for their money and women for their free labor, while the opposition is fighting equally hard for the preservation of the nuclear family as the solution to the degeneracy spread by the West.
Yes.
And mixed in with all of that are everyday people, just like you, coming online, devastated, brokenhearted about how they got gaslit, breadcrumbed, future faked, and love bombed to the point of grieving the love they no longer believe in. Oh, and I can't forget to sprinkle some drizzle on top of all of this insanity for good measure. Thank you for sitting through that.
You're welcome.
I know it felt icky.
The ick.
This is where we're supposed to find love and romance. Remember romance? The thing that requires presence
simping?
And playfulness and openness and adoration.
That's a joke. That's a joke if
No?
you see my other video.
Doesn't ring a bell? Well, I don't blame you for forgetting. The modern dating scene has actually made history. Dating culture has truly gone above and beyond to make sure that love is inaccessible. Love has managed to survive centuries, wars, plagues, famines, just for us to swipe it into extinction in the 21st century.
Yeah, and I can't help but think how much of this has been a cause of social media. Because if you got to think about it, up until about, 30, 40 years ago, it was generally, actually maybe even a little bit before then, but it was generally for a long time, it was you find a person, you stay with them, you have kids, right? Nuclear family was like the only option, was like the only thing people did. And monkey see, monkey do, people just kind of fell into that. And it was largely at the behest of the church that kind of told people this was the way we're going to do it. It's not until we have the internet and all these different types of ideas that come out, and now everybody has their idea and their hot take about everything, about men, about women, about relationships, about polyamory and all this shit, right? And so now everybody has this kind of, you have a market, like she just laid out, a market of different avenues you can take when looking at relationships, and different angles you can look at, different ways you can do it. And it used to be just so simple. It was a simple laid out, this is what you're going to do, and here you go. And in some sense, more does not always equal better. Everybody always wants to act like choice and freedom to choose is the best thing ever, but it's like, the older and older I get and the more I'm starting to see the world, I actually think that choice is kind of bullshit, and it's not the be all end all. I think there's sometimes a better route to take that limits your choice, than there is having unlimited. You had the freedom to choose. This abstract principle of being free and individual and choosing the path you want to take. Nah, I think that there actually is a right path people can take that will make them the happiest. And it doesn't involve having to go through the gambit of different relationships and meeting different people and doing. I think there is a path that you can take that will make you the most fulfilled and most happy.
Well done. We have yet another thing to add to the list of historical events that we have lived through. But in all seriousness, I've spent weeks writing and ideating in preparation for this video. I made tons of notes about how it's because of unregulated tech, or it's because we have too many options, or it's because it's not economically feasible, or it's because we may be evolving out of monogamy. I didn't know what exactly it was, and I wasn't sure how I could cram all these nuances, all these pages of notes into a single video without overwhelming people into shutting down. Because this topic is incredibly important. We are talking about a major part of all of our lives. Most of you watching are in your 20s and 30s, and getting into a healthy relationship is probably in your top 3 things that you'd like to have before a certain age. So I really want to make this video land. And so I decided to not make it more complicated than it really is. Because after all these notes, and after all this ideation, and after all this thinking, and after all these discussions I've had with people, it really just boils down to 2 things. Number 1, there's no human decency. Human decency has left the chat a long time ago. And number 2, a massive, 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 I cannot emphasize this enough, a massive fear of getting hurt. That's it. Deadly combination though. People will do just about anything when they are scared of one another, even abandon their morals. It turns out we did not know the extent to which ignorance facilitated our relationships. It has really been the glue that held our respective roles together. The truth? Don't worry about that. You can find out after you get married and have kids. But now that ignorance is out, self-preservation is in, at any cost. For the first time in history, the general population now knows how effed up we all really are, and the lengths that we are willing to go to secure what we want, the tactics that we use to condemn each other into handing over what we think we are entitled to.
Yeah, and that kind of plays into what I said earlier and kind of what she was hinting at there a minute ago. We have so much view of everything all the time. And you can see just how shit everybody is at all moments. She's talking about these podcasts and stuff where they bring the worst people in the world on these podcasts, right? And I've reacted to some of them, right? And it's like, as somebody watching it, as a man watching it, you see some of these women who come on and you think, I don't want any part of this shit. I'm not gonna get burned by one of these 304s, right? I'm not gonna get burned because, and you continuously watch it, and you think that that's the general population of women. And you know, there might be a larger section of women who act like that than there used to be, but I don't think it's every woman. And I think that she's absolutely right. There's so many on the male side. There's so many men who don't want to get burned from women divorcing them and taking 50% of their assets, right? And on the female side, I think there's a lot of women who get caught up in men cheating, men being, you know, violent, men being all these things, right? And it's a culture of fear and seeing the worst of people, right?
Such sophistication. But don't be fooled. It's all a front. Grown adults will use their resources, their power, their wit to convince you they are not afraid of anything. They're afraid. In fact, they tell on themselves
You're not.
The more you let them speak, by the lengths
Yes,
that they're willing to go to
this is actually true. This is funny. Not really related to the video at all, but I actually had a scenario. She's right. She's absolutely right. If you talk to somebody long enough and you leave enough dead air, people will tell you their sins. They will reveal their sins to you. I think that there is a feeling and a need to confess what they've done, especially if they did something wrong recently. There's a very appealing process going on that in their inside them that they want to confess to you. That's an interesting point.
The fragility they are so ashamed of.
I had somebody do that to me
because
recently.
Because you cannot convince me that this is how a secure person conducts themselves, by jumping through all these hoops. I don't think so. It is so obvious that this is what's really happening. And I am baffled that we have made it about everything but what it's really about. That we are scared. Are we really that terrified of being decent human beings? Or are we just stupid? Because here's what I don't understand.
Yeah, because being decent and being nice means you're a fucking sucker. And you're just ready to be raped. Maybe I should have said that. No, YouTube TOS is gonna fucking kill me, right? But you're just waiting to get fucked, right? If you're a nice person and you have decency. Hey, if you're a man, you have to be Andrew Tate. You have to be willing to kill a bitch. In Minecraft, you have to be willing to kill. You have to be willing to kill, because you're not gonna get taken. You're not gonna get your shit taken.
And how is all of this any easier than having a basic level of empathy and respect for how we interact with one another? How is this any less painful than being genuine about who you are, where you're at, and what you can give in exchange for what you want? How is this any more effective than just sitting it out when you know deep down that you are not ready to take another person's best interest as your own? Am I simplifying the matter? Because it sounds to me like a lot of extra work for something that most people clearly cannot handle, which for some reason has become a non-factor.
People can't handle it. She's right. A lot of people can't handle it nowadays. And I had a video on this not too long ago about if you're a man and you're looking to date a woman, you have to be in the right state financially, emotionally, mentally, because you're taking on. And that's just from the male perspective. The woman's perspective, you have a whole other. I mean, there's other advice to them. I'm just a man, so I can only talk about myself. But as a male's perspective, you're taking on another person that you're going to be caring for, you're going to be protecting, you're going to be maybe eventually providing for, and you need to be in a state that is. You need to be prepared for that, right? And a lot of men aren't, right? A lot of men are fuckboys. They're idiots. They're not even working. They have nothing, right? They have like basically nothing. And I think that it's an interesting point that we aren't preparing people for this. We aren't preparing people to be in relationships like this. That's something that we need to talk about too. And I hope she gets into it, is that we used to prepare people for marriage when they were 16. Getting married, we're going to hand off my daughter to a man. And the man has been working since he was 11. And he knows how to do, he has his own farm or something, right? He has his own business. Now you're 35 and you're still living with your mom and dad. Like, yeah, no shit, that person's not going to be ready for marriage because they probably had one or two relationships in their life. They haven't had to care or protect or do anything. They have no responsibility. They have no idea how the world works. They're a child for their whole lives. And their parents sit there and go, why haven't you done anything with your life? Well, we haven't prepared them to do anything for their lives. We've just given them video games and cookies and porn and said, here you go. Fill your day with that. And they do, and people do.
Shame and not being ready for a relationship. By admitting that to yourself, you're actually one step closer to it.
Yeah, people want it. People want the relationship, but they don't. Exactly. She's exactly right. But they don't have the understanding of what it takes to be in the relationship because nobody's telling them. Nobody's really showing them because there's really no good relationships that people can mirror. A lot people learn they learn passively. They learn from mirroring other people. And there's almost no relationships nowadays that are actually worthwhile to look at. I think about my own parents have been married since 1989. 1989. And I think, wow, that is such an, they've had their ups and downs. It wasn't always roses and daisies when I was growing up, but it's an image of something that has lasted that I can look at and say, my own relationships, I can say, that's something I want to mirror. And I can go to them and I can look at it, but I can also go to them and say, how did you overcome this? How did you overcome the financial difficulties you had? How did you overcome having 4 children when you were so young, How did you overcome death, violence, all these things, whatever. And that's an image that you can look at and you can try and, extrapolate from it and instantiate it onto your own relationships. But nowadays, so many people I know are from broken families and broken homes. And there's nothing there for them to even to glean any information from. They're just bumbling through life. But what do they have? They have the internet. They have these fucking psychos to tell them, hold frame. Hold frame, idiot. Hold frame and have a harem of women. Or all men are predators, right? Or be in a poly relationship. Like just the sick market of relationships, right? That you can pick from and say what fits. And then people just they knock them down. And like she did in the beginning, they go through each one and they try them out. And none of them are working. And then they're going to bumble through life till they're 60. And they realize they have no kids. They have no family. They have nothing. It's really sad, man.
Understand that the foundation of a healthy bond is to take someone else's best interest as your own.
Yes. And will the good of someone else.
That is admitting when you're only capable of concerning yourself with yours. Oh, but what do I do in the meantime? We all need love, right? Yes,
right. People want it.
And that's why there are so many places to find it. One of those is in you. By investing in yourself, by finding your people in your tribe, by sharing your gifts with the world, by making friends. Make friends with men and women. See if you even like them outside of a sensual context. Get curious about their experience. Learn how they communicate. If you can't do that, what makes you think you can do a relationship? A relationship is a balancing act of friendship and intimacy and partnership and so much more. The only ones that make it work are the ones that really want it anyways. I have never seen 2 indifferent people with each other make a relationship last, a harmonious, successful relationship last. It's impossible.
And it's going to get bad. If you're in a long-term relationship, it will be terrible at times. That's something I've learned from my parents. They've had they had their ups. They've also had their downs. And you have to realize that it's going to be bad at times. It's going to be really bad. You're going to hate each other. But you have to be able to work through that. You have to have that long-lasting understanding and not just throw it away on a whim.
You have to be committed to making this a thriving environment for you as a couple and individuals. Otherwise, what's the point? Not everyone is ready for that responsibility. Oh, but how am I supposed to get ready without some experience? No one wants to be your experience. We all know how we want to be treated. Mental health, spirituality, personal development, mentorships have never been more accessible. We have never been more self-aware. In fact, now we have an epidemic of being hyper self-aware.
True.
So I think we can all agree that there is no longer an excuse to date, knowing that you're going to spiral if you get rejected, knowing that you'll manipulate people, knowing that you're afraid of being alone, knowing that you'll treat people like an expendable resource, that you'll outsource your self-validation, that you'll lead someone on, that you'll keep your options open while being in a commitment. There's no excuse to sign up for any of it if it makes you a bad person to good people. I promise you, this is taxing your psyche more than you can imagine. Whatever you are running away from, I guarantee you it cannot be any more agonizing than this.
It's like a therapy session.
It seems like it's all fun and games until you realize it is not a game at all. It is our relational health, the core of our well-being. An 85-year-old Harvard study on the #1 factor of a long, happy life confirmed this. It's our relationships. I have seen some of the most heartbreaking examples, both online and real life, about how one person can completely alter the course of another person's life. The other day, I saw a woman on TikTok who was talking about the mistreatment she faced in her relationship and how that caused her to have PTSD, which caused her to become paralyzed. That did not have to happen. A part of me, actually all of me, is relieved that the dating market is collapsing. Its failure is actually a sign of hope because it means that we are not wired to find fulfillment through deception, even if it gets us what we want. The dating market incentivizing deception is actually the most ironic thing ever because you cannot deceive your way into an authentic connection, even if your intention is just to protect yourself. Impact trumps intention when you are playing with people's sensitivities. I'm going to say that again. Impact trumps intention when you are playing with people's sensitivities. It doesn't...
Let's think about that. Impact trumps intention. Okay. I can get behind that.
matter that you're trying to protect
Took me a
yourself,
second. I had to process
that you
that. I
didn't
was
mean to
like...
hurt them. Your impact will always be the reason that they treat you the way that they treat you.
Yeah. Okay.
Ultimately, the reason why we resort to playing these games, why we justify our self-interest at others' expense, is because of the safety that it provides us. But we gotta ask ourselves, is this dependency on safety actually safe? Because no matter how strategic or secure you are, how much healing you've done, there's no escaping the potential of being a casualty for someone else's experience. And I had to learn that the hard way. It's the cost of pursuing this level of connection. I really struggle to accept this because I really hate the idea of being disrupted because of someone else messing up or not knowing what they want and just coming into my life to figure that out. I really, really hate that. And if you spent years working on yourself, you know how much of a risk it is to put yourself out there, especially when 90% of the dating pool is not ready for a relationship and 80% will not disclose that to you. So I understand the self-preservation. I really do. However, I have noticed the more we run from pain, the more it chases us until we feel it. The possibility that most of your relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships, will fail and that they will impact your relationship is very high. That's just how it works. Even if you play the game impeccably and get what you've always wanted, that man with a trust fund who's 6'5" with blue eyes, or your fit, feminine, friendly dream girl, it's just the beginning. How much longer do you think you can pretend to be the person you became just to catch them? Because relationships have a way of exposing you pretty early on.
Yeah.
And once they do, you can't take that vulnerability back. They saw it. So my question is, if that's where we're heading to anyways, why not get there by being decent human beings? Because I'm willing to bet that will actually build the trust, compassion, and mutual desire to understand one another that will lovingly contain your vulnerabilities. Even if we were to remove the morality from all of this, it still takes the win for the best strategy because you retain your integrity. Your heart may get broken, but your soul remains open. Oh, but being genuine gets you played. I don't want to be shrewd, but that's the only way I know I can get what I deserve. Although that may be true, here's all I'm going to say about that. If you're finding yourself in a place where your vices are functional, your virtues will not be needed. Which actually reminds me, I binged a show called The Blue Eye Samurai last week, where the main character Mizu goes on a quest to seek revenge on the 4 colonizers that were corrupting Japan at the time. One of them is actually her father, the one that she especially wants dead. And slight spoiler alert, so skip the next 30 seconds if you care. She does manage to track one of them down. He was hiding for a decade in an insanely secure fortress on a mountain on a remote island, protected by all these traps with practically no way in. It was an impossible mission. But Mizu was set on her revenge, so she went for it. She survived it all by almost becoming the monster she came to kill. It was such a poetic example of how our means can
gaze into the abyss
before we get to the end.
Yeah.
If you make your love inaccessible to others by hiding it in a fortress of fear, at the top of Manipulation Mountain, on an island of deceit, surrounded by a sea of denial just to protect yourself, do you think you'll even find your way back to it? Even if you do, you can't help but wonder if the things that you have to put yourself through to retrieve that love when the time is right make you into a monster. Would you still be capable of it? I don't think it's worth losing yourself to find someone else safely without getting hurt, who you'll end up resenting every time you search for yourself in them with no luck. And that's not to say that these bonds don't come with their challenges. Love is not effortless, but it should still feel good. And it should never, ever, ever compromise your goodness. Speaking of, if you have somehow managed to preserve your goodness, you have acknowledged your faults, you have worked on them, you've made the right intentions, you have considered people's needs without neglecting your own, and so on, it's almost your duty now to preserve that goodness. So many open-hearted people just searching for an authentic connection feel so alone in this space. So alone to the point of turning into the very people that hurt them just for some company.
Yeah.
So consider yourself right for the job.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and she's absolutely right. Like, there's so many people out there who they view relationships as a goal, right? As a means to, like, the actions they take as a means to an end of getting this person. And so many times they might act in a certain way in the beginning that it's very open, but then time after time they're getting hurt, and that poisons it and turns them into, like she's saying, turns them into a monster, and it turns them into doing these sneaky tricks and sneaky things because they don't want it to turn out like the other ones. But she's absolutely right. You're going to have to go through the gambit to get to what you actually want. It's not about deciphering and cheating and lying to get the 6'5" Chad or the trad wife you want, right? You're not going to lie and cheat to try and get that. You need to be authentic and you need to be honest and genuine. She's absolutely right.
Because you are still that person.
The pain that you suffer through that gambit, people turn that into themselves rather than use it and kind of digest it and then say, I learned from that, or that person, although that didn't work out, there were things that I gleaned from that relationship, and there's things that they gleaned from me that they can take with them into the future, rather than sitting there and like seething about it and then saying, well, the next person I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be like a sneaky little cheat, So she's right.
How far you have fallen in the past. And the only way to do that is by becoming wise about who can nurture this quality further and who can't. And that does not need to come from a place of contempt or self-righteousness. Self-respect will do just fine. I'm going to end with this. I have a theory that the dating scene is actually a type of purgatory for those who choose fear as their path to love. Their individual state is creating their perception of the collective experience, which is one of danger, to which they need to protect themselves from by resorting to fear-based behavior.
Yeah.
It's actually a choice. It's a choice that we are all making, not because we lack the means to change the entire dating scene, but because we don't value emotional courage. And when you think about it, it's actually not a coincidence that there's a higher demand for unconditional love more than ever. Why? What function does unconditional love have? It's actually the perfect front for seeming like and getting the benefits of an emotionally courageous person, because you're the one that's introducing this concept of giving without expectation and accepting someone without any terms, when it's actually a setup to get them to agree to give you absolute permission to act from fear without any consequences. It's actually genius, because if you slip up and they call you out, you can shame them into excusing your behavior on the grounds that they promise to love you unconditionally. It's a vulnerability standoff that is creating this dynamic, because nobody wants to go first.
Well, so you can understand that's something, I don't really know if unconditional love really exists in this world, okay, other than maybe your mother. Like, I don't really think that that's true, that you're going to have. So I don't know if she's about to get, but that's kind of a facade in of itself. If you're telling somebody, I love you unconditionally, like, I don't really know that exists other than from God and from your mother, right? I don't think unconditional love really exists. But that being said, I think that you can have an understanding that there is this kind of give and take here in a relationship, right? I mean, clearly we're all in it to get something and to give something as well. And we're giving and taking in this kind of mutual exchange. And I think people need to be honest about that and say, yes, I'm giving you my time. Yes, I'm giving you my love. And I would like your time and your love in return. And we can set these terms and we can lay this out. But I guess that's what she's saying, is that a lot of people don't want to be emotionally vulnerable and say, this is what I want and what I require. They'd rather just have this image of the relationship for I don't know, social media or for their friends or whatever. And they would rather use these tactics, these fear-based tactics, to get what they want, rather than actually just be honest with people.
We deprive ourselves of this meaningful connection, and we seek it through volatility. I can't tell you how many times I've witnessed these situations where one or both people have this super intense instant connection, have already proclaimed their love for one another, started planning their future together, made all these promises, and 3 weeks later, it's like they never knew each other.
Yeah,
because it was insane. Never, ever about love or this once-in-a-lifetime instant connection.
It's about like the idea.
It was always about an addiction to volatility.
Sure, yeah.
And of course it was, because that's as close to love as you're going to get when no one wants to go first. Even if someone does go first, we are so conditioned to anticipate betrayal because we're in this fear state that we dismiss these bids for connection as traps or even cringe. The reason human decency is so rare these days is because we are acting out of fear. And when we do that, we create this moral dissonance. Moral dissonance hurts everybody because it compromises the wider net of safety that is there to support our goodness. We really are that interconnected. If it's one thing the dating market has done right, is feed us our own poison. And I think the moment that realization sinks in is the moment a lot of us get out. Because we finally realize there is no place to go to find love. There is no strategy to win. There's only the embodiment of it.
Yeah, wow, that was a good video. I've never seen this girl before. I'll put the link down in the description. This was sent to me, and this was a good video. It's kind of weird though. She kind of was like whispering the whole time. I don't know. It was almost like ASMR, but I thought it was very good, and it was very on the nose. I think there's a lot of issues with the dating market nowadays, and I think the two major reasons, maybe three, but the 2 or 3 biggest major reasons why dating is so shit is because the vulnerability aspect. Yes, people don't want to be real with anybody ever because it's largely because of fear, right? I think it's not having good images of long-lasting relationships anywhere in their lives. And this is kind of the third one I mentioned earlier, is that the internet has basically replaced the second one with this kind of marketplace of different ideas of what a relationship should be. So nobody has this everybody's basing it off of fear, the relationships off of fear, and they have no image of what a good relationship looks like, so they just insert kind of these, it's like fear-based tactics to get these weird internet amalgamations of what relationships should be. So it's created this monster of a dating market. And she's absolutely right. I think people really just need to get back to the truth. Get back to the truth of who you are, what you want. And people need to understand, I said this a minute ago, people need to understand that relationships are transactional to a degree, that there is a give and take, right? But you're doing it because you want to achieve something greater. You want to achieve this relationship, right? A long-lasting relationship. And because we don't have the image of what a relationship should look like in our lives, we have nowhere. We see it nowhere. Everybody's divorced. Everybody's in some weird situationship or whatever. We don't have an idea of how that should go and what we should actually be achieving. So a lot of people are just bumbling around and floating around, and they're using fear-based tactics to try and just take snippets out of people until everybody's just a shell of themselves when they're in their we're going to see these generations in their 40s and 50s are just going to be husks of what they should be. And it's going to be really sad, and I hope that we can turn it around, man. I think this is going to be a major issue. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give me a like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I will see you all next time.